I just dropped off the LS2 at the garage where the Trailblazer's been sitting all this time, all these months later. It took way longer than I thought it was going to take for them to do the work, but they were the guys who came recommended, so be it. The engine ended up with a different cam in it now that's done, and they just basically went through the whole thing and cleaned it right up. They ended up, I think, doing it like 2,000 over just to get the cylinder walls scrubbed enough that it would be fresh, because it being a 408 going from an LS2, like which I think the stock one is a 354, going to a 408 cubic inch, you're already kind of at the very max with the pistons that were in it as far as how over you are. I believe the pistons that are in it are 30 over, which is like right at the nominal range, but lots of guys are running it that way. The cam that ended up going in it is a Comp Cams 54-459-11. It's an LSR cam. I believe it's 231, 239, and the LSA is 113. It's a bit rowdier than what was in there. Thought the cam that was in there was a Rob's cam, but it was actually a custom grind from Comp, because the numbers that came out were different. So the theory is actually that PCM may have had that cam made, or whatever the guy bought it from just didn't have the cam he said had in it. The cam that was in it was actually more aggressive than I had thought, based on what Comp's numbers came back as. Things that have also changed is it had aluminum roller rockers in it, and that's actually what caused the problem. Is an aluminum roller rocker broke. It's the little things that get you. It's yeah, I'm actually impressed at how it broke. That's looking crazy. Huh. Wow. The builder and I decided to go with GM GM stock stamped steel rockers. That seems counterintuitive, but the consensus is with the lifts that we're running on this engine, which actually is a pretty high lift motor, or our top end, geometrically everything is dialed. Even Texas Speed is running stamped steel GM rockers now, at those RPMs and those lifts. The stamped steel rockers are not going to break. An aluminum rocker, just by its nature, is going to be more likely to break. And it was kind of bizarre that I broke one in the first place. When it happened like turning the car on. So obviously it was over a long period of time that wear happened and weakened whichever rocker it broke. I have the parts here, and that it ended up being the issue. But what's nice is now with the trunnion kit, I'm right where I was max lift anyway. Have a nicer cam in it, and it's going to be just as fun. I think I'm hoping the idle's going to be pretty rowdy based on what I've looked up about it, as far as YouTube clips of that cam are, and LS2s and 408s. What else changed? Not a whole lot else changed in the engine. I have a tuner who's going to meet the day we crank it over. He's building a base map for this cam based on all the specs that I have, and what the engine has done to it. And he's going to be out here for that startup to monitor it, and then we're going to do a road tune on it pretty much right away. It's going to have break-in oil and all that fun stuff in it, and yeah, I'm going to have it back. The guys at the shop are also going to put the oil accumulator in, just because it's out already, so it's the easiest way to do it. That's about it. So this video is actually going to be that startup next. Haha! How's the oil pressure? Good. Nice. as this thing has been breaking in, I noticed that it was burning some oil on startup. And kind of when it idled, after for a bit, it was still blowing a little blue smoke. And I thought maybe at first it was a little bit still the rings or whatever seating, but it kind of kept going. And I did the first oil change, and I kind of thought maybe it would get better after that. Kept going. And it was fine once you got driving. Idling at like the side of the road or a light, or after I'd driven a quite a distance, it was clear. And I couldn't figure out why. And I started really looking into it. I started kind of obsessing about it because obviously I want this thing to be perfect. And I thought, okay, well, you know, is there something, did the rings not seat? So my brain went to a really bad place initially. And I did a few little diagnostics you can do for that, like pulled off the valve cap, the oil fill cap, checked to see if there was like some really serious pressure coming out. None at all. In fact, there was a vacuum, a touch of vacuum, which is what you want, pulling in, not out, which means you have good crankcase pressure. And then, you know, I start to think like, okay, well, if it's, you know, I don't know, what else could this be? And then I'm like, okay, well, if we're burning oil, there's oil getting into the intake or into the cylinder somehow. So I pulled a plug, and the plugs actually looked pretty good, and there wasn't really any oil on any of the ones I pulled. I was like, okay, I didn't pull the very rear ones. And I kind of skipped that and was like, okay, well, why don't we look in the intake? Took the intake manifold off, or took the intake pipe off the throttle body, pushed open the butterfly, and immediately I see the whole inside of the intake is coated in oil. And I kind of thought that was going to be the case because these LS2s run a PCV system that doesn't have a check valve. It's just how the LS2 was set up. It uses a valley cover port for the crankcase. It uses a passenger side valve cover and a rear driver side valve cover like connection to do this process, to actually like vent the gases and all the bad stuff and get it back in the system, and it ports into the intake. So they're known to have oil in the intake. Well, I look into it. When I open the intake and really look at it, there's like a pool of oil inside. And I was like, what the fuck is this? This is crazy. Like, so I sucked that up with my extractor. I was like, okay, well, maybe that'll help. It went through like half a quart of oil in 100 kilometers, which is like outrageous, not possible, totally crazy. I thought, okay, well, maybe that makes the difference. And I checked the PCV valve. The pipe was wet with oil. So I knew where it was happening. It was coming from the driver's rear port. So after I sucked it up and after I checked all that, I thought maybe that was just, I need a catch can, I ordered a catch can, that was coming. But then I started thinking about some more, and I'm like, well, maybe something else is going on. And then I searched like specific terms, TBSS intake manifold, lots of oil, pool of oil, those sort of things. And eventually I came across this guy, I can't remember his tag on one of the forums is like quad wrap or something. And he was like, he described exactly what I was experiencing. Literally half a quart drop in oil in like 100 to 200 kilometer max, which is insane. And he suspected it was coming from his valve cover. And he identified that there was a recall where Chevy GMC did a valve cover recall, an updated version that had a baffle on the back. And I'll show a picture of that now. So I found this out last night, and I was out most of the day. I had like a big surf today. It was super awesome with my buds, and it's on my mind. And I've just finally like got a chance to check my valve cover. So I open my valve cover and I flip it. And mine isn't the first revision. Mine isn't the second revision. It's the third revision, which should have been a good thing. But the baffle had been cut out of the valve cover. Completely removed. So I know where my oil was getting sucked up from. It was getting literally sucked right out of the valve cover, no baffle, no nothing. As soon as you get into any real RPM, there's so much oil flying around in those valve covers. The oil's going to go the path of least resistance when there's a lot of intake pressure pulling it in. So I found my problem. So here is the Amazon $32 Prime catch can that I received today. It is aluminum. I took it all apart. It's actually really, I'd say it's actually really good quality for the money. It is baffled. It has a little dipstick. I will be surprised if I ever even have to empty this, because now that I've made the change going from the valley cover down there rather than the driver's side valve cover, today driving, I don't think I didn't burn a drop of oil, like none. When I topped it up this morning, it was half down. When I checked it at the end of the day, it was still exactly at full. So there's your entry to the intake manifold. And then we go around here, down. So that's the out of the can there. Here's the in of the can. That's the pipe, that's the hose it came with, which is like a nice poly hose. And that goes down into the valley cover there. There we go. Yeah, anyway, I figured kind of better safe than sorry. It will keep oil out of the motor, and it will burn off the shitty kind of acidic and kind of caustic gases that end up coming out of the crankcase. So I'm fine with that, and it's good for emissions, and it will keep oil out of the converter as well, which the oils don't like, or the converters don't like oil, especially anything with ZDP in it. So anyway, that's that. Might report back on that at some point, but for now, I'm going to put this back on.